going to be reviewing this beautiful book right here, right in this little box here that you can see on Showcase for the Whole World because I love it. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So you've probably heard me mention this book quite a few times in my more recent videos. I read this when I was away on holiday in America and I absolutely loved it. It's a big chunky book here. It's about 650 pages and really teeny tiny writing, but I whizzed through this one. I remember reading it on my bus trips while I was exploring the country and just being completely engrossed in this story. And today I'm going to share my thoughts and opinions about this book and hopefully convince you to buy it because it's freaking amazing. I think I'm going to have to steal Patrick Rothfuss's own words in describing this one. It is an epic fantasy that satirizes epic fantasy, and it's realistic. It is set in this fantastical world, a very complex fantastical world, but it's not the typical fantasy story that you're expecting. There's magic involved, there's creepy, evil creatures, but the storyline doesn't follow this hero that rises and defeats the dragon and saves a princess. That's not at all what this story is about. It is so much more. And what I mean by realistic is that in this story, the main character, Kvothe, his story is epic, definitely, but it's not centered around one big action. It's actually following his life story. We first get to know him from a young age and we witness his struggles throughout the years, and this involves absolutely everything, but in no way is this story boring. It is so captivating, keeps you wanting to know more. The world in which it is set in is so complex, so well thought out. If you still don't really know what this book is about, that's okay. Like, seriously, it's a really hard book to describe. It's really good. Okay, I can tell you that. So recently I've been watching a lot of author interviews with Patrick Rothfuss, and I've learned quite a few interesting things about it. First of all, this is a trilogy, but Patrick Rothfuss didn't write the first book, then get it published, then write the second book and get it published. What he did was he wrote the entire story, the complete story, thousands and thousands of words worth of this world, and then he separated them into books, and it took 7 years to write Kvothe's story, but then it was another 7 years of revision, very meticulous revision. So that's 14 years worth of writing and editing until the story was to a point where he thought it could be published. So then after the first book is published, we don't get the second one really close by. We get it like 4 years later because, again, there's a lot of editing involved. And I thought this was a really interesting fact to know because when it comes to reading the sequels, there are no indiscrepancies or inconsistencies. It flows so beautifully. Another thing that I learnt was that Patrick Rothfuss loves world building. He's added so much depth to the world that this book is set in that there are so many aspects of it that aren't going to be included in any of the books, like for example currencies and foreign nationalities and a whole bunch of other things. It makes the world so complex and so realistic because it feels like a legitimate universe with so much detail that isn't even included in the books, or maybe even little tidbits are alluded to in one of the stories at one point. But even still, it's so thorough and so well thought out that it completely engrosses you. This story really does draw you right in. Truth be told, I don't know how to review this book without spoiling anything. It is so difficult, and I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing because the synopsis on the back of the book is extremely vague. It's actually a quote from the book, but basically what you can gather is that there is this man called Kvothe, and he is this extremely well-known figure, kind of like a hero, an idol, but at the same time there are obviously going to be so many different rumors about him, both negative and both positive, so many different stories about the things he has done, some of which are exaggerated or completely false. There is this chronicler who approaches Kvothe and asks for a story in its entirety, in its truth. We actually get to know the real Kvothe. We get to know the real him, what actually happened. And I think that's so much more interesting than learning about these rumored stories of him being an extreme hero, rescuing so many damsels in distress that he doesn't know what to do with himself. No, it's so realistic, and we get the truth of his story, and it's so raw and so very intense at some points. It's just so freaking good. It's a freaking good book. I love Kvothe. Throughout this book, he's a young boy to about his mid-teens, and he is an extremely intelligent boy, but he hasn't experienced the world like a lot of his peers have. A lot of the other characters are more experienced in so many different ways, in so many different things. It's really interesting to see how Kvothe interacts with these people and reacts in certain situations, because at some points he can be really naive, especially when it comes to the ladies, which makes the story really interesting and, again, so realistic, because it's not like we have this young boy that knows everything about the world. He doesn't know everything. And I also loved to see these things change as he grows. And then the array of side characters. I pretty much love every single character even mentioned in this book, because they each have their own distinct personality. They're completely separate from each other. There's none that kind of blend together and you're like, wait, which one's this one? What does he do? What? There's none of that, because they're each so very different, so diverse. The characterization in this book is so brilliant and complex, and it's just freaking good. Freaking good. Just every single aspect of this story is pretty much perfect. The writing is fantastic, so detailed, but not overly so. You're not completely overwhelmed with all this information or bored of the descriptions. The universe is painted so richly and so colourfully, it feels so real. And the story itself, Kvothe has to go through so many difficult situations, has to overcome so many hurdles. It's also really interesting to compare the young Kvothe that we're learning about with the man he is in the present day. And this book obviously doesn't answer all of the questions. And I'm eagerly waiting to know what happened to him and how he came to be in his position now. This book earns a 5 out of 5 stars from me. Most definitely, it is a fantastic book. I seriously recommend this book to absolutely everyone, even those that are not interested in fantasy, because it's so different from anything else out there. You're not completely overwhelmed with the fantastical elements. Again, it's very realistic and it feels like this universe could exist. Everything in this book could happen, which I think is such an important part of this book. Patrick Rothfuss is incredibly talented. He's a fantastic writer, and I think that everyone should be able to witness the beauty that this book holds. I am reading the second book at the moment. It is fantastic as well. I love the story so much. I love all of the characters. I love the world. It's all just so good. So good. So yes, that is my review, or more of a ramble, about The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I will have links down below to this book's Goodreads and where you can buy it and everything like that. And yes, I will see you guys tomorrow.